Hi, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing today I'm going to be looking at content marketing and SeaWorld. Yes, this is another episode where I'm going to be talking about documentaries, and it's not going to be the last. This is a series dedicated to content marketing and how powerful it is, and how I genuinely believe it is the only marketing left and should be everyone's priority, along with other channels, but documentaries are even gaining in popularity and gaining in power, and I still think it might be the most popular and the most powerful piece of content that you can create. So let's go this. All right, now my childhood. Now I'll be honest, I was never actually someone who went to SeaWorld. Not that I can remember. I don't think I've ever actually been to SeaWorld, but I was a child when about 10 years old or so when Free Willy came out, and I was a huge fan of it, and became a big fan of orcas and whale performing. But obviously the point of that movie was Willy wasn't very happy being captive, and it was all about freeing him, hence the title. And so today I'm going to be looking at the documentary that came out in 2013. Now, prior to this, SeaWorld was actually a very, very strong brand. Everyone loved SeaWorld. It had a good reputation. It certainly had its protesters. Any animal activists weren't always the biggest fan of it, but in the public eye, SeaWorld was still a very good thing. And the brand was stronger than ever in 2013. And then ask anybody think about your own self, how happy you were to think about the idea of going to SeaWorld, or when you went to it. Everyone I know who went to it had such positive experience with it. But then in 2013, a documentary came out called Blackfish, which essentially, I'm sure a lot of you have actually already seen it, but essentially it was a documentary about how SeaWorld captures, how they captured orcas in the wild and put them in captivity, the treatment of them while they're in captivity. Well, those SeaWorld staff actually treated them quite well once they were in the major tanks. It was more the psychological effects of orcas in captivity as a whole. These creatures are meant to swim for a long time and have a lot of activity, and now they're stuck and being, it was very psychologically damaging to them. This isn't supposed to turn into something where I certainly agree with the message in the documentary. This is more about the power of the documentary and that it had on SeaWorld. So the movie, like I said, came out in 2013 and started winning multiple awards, including ones at Sundance. But what was not expected was the aftermath from this. Now, certainly people knew that it would cause concerns about SeaWorld and issues around that, but SeaWorld started seeing dramatic drops in profits. You can see from this screen capture an 84% drop in profits in the second quarter back in 2014. And these continued back through 2015, and they're continuing to see drops to the point where I predict SeaWorld is about to either go out of business completely or completely shift. It will no longer, it's already come out and said that it's not going to be breeding or having any more whale shows in the future, so SeaWorld might be limited to other animals. And essentially the reason for this downfall, and there have been supporting pieces of content since, and other people have been talking about it, but the reason for this is quite simple, and you can just see the proof all around you that this one documentary, Blackfish, essentially ended SeaWorld and ended the brand as we know it today. Most people now have a negative feeling when they think about the brand, and I believe that a lot of the information in the documentary was actually true. I'm sure some of it was exaggerated. There's SeaWorld has come out and said that that not all the facts in there are true. A lot of them were exaggerated. But the fact of the matter is, true or false, in this case doesn't really matter. It's showing how powerful that documentary really was with people, and how powerful that piece of content was, and really tapped into something. Now, SeaWorld did its best. It did everything that you would imagine. It hired some of the best, brand crisis and PR firms to help them try and combat this. But even coming on board, when you read interviews, they thought this was something that really couldn't be turned around. So they had the SeaWorld Cares. They had these little commercials come out about how, all the facts, like in Blackfish, and the things that people are hearing aren't actually true. All the right things that they were doing, creating the SeaWorld Cares, even had an Ask SeaWorld campaign on Twitter where you could go in there and just ask any questions and they'd answer it honestly. And that just turned into a forum that made everything actually worse because people were just using it as a forum to really bash SeaWorld and talk about how bad everything that they're doing is and kind of alliterating everything that happened in Blackfish. So none of it worked. I would love to hear comments from people that what SeaWorld really could have done to combat this. But I don't think anyone could have really helped them. And that's because, what Blackfish was trying to achieve, they achieved it. And they did it so perfectly in that documentary that nothing could really be done about it. I think over time, it's not going to be forgotten. I think the documentaries continue to be played. And the minute it gets a little old, something new is going to come out. Already a book's been come out about the negative effects, SeaWorld has on orcas. So I think that one piece of content has actually managed to not only destroy the brand, but I don't think there's any way that they're going to come back from it. And I think the fact that SeaWorld has now come out and said that they will no longer be breeding orcas in captivity, they've really changed something. And if you're like me, who I actually believe most of what was in the documentary to an extent, this is a good thing. So this piece of content was created for a good purpose and had good intentions, and it's getting the response that it needs to get. But what does this really show? One, it's the power of the documentary. Certainly not the first documentary to have a rippling effect on everything. You had Super Size Me, you had Bowling for Columbine, multiple things by Michael Moore, whether you agree or not agree with his messaging. The power of his documentaries, that's the best way to get people's messages out. And I'm looking at messages that had I'm looking at documentaries that had that really had a reason behind them and had a intention behind them of bringing to light some negative things. But there's also documentaries out there, Andrew Davis and something I've talked about multiple times on here, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, which was a documentary used in order to sell blenders, essentially, by creating a piece of content that really spoke to its audience. And these documentaries aren't always going to have the effect that Blackfish had. To my knowledge, McDonald's is still doing very, very well. But it did get rid of the supersize at McDonald's. And if you look at McDonald's menu these days, there's a lot more healthy items on there. All the unhealthy items are still there, but Happy Meals now really kind of promote having fruit in there. They have the milk. Like I said, the supersize size of McDonald's meals went away after this documentary. So two things really to take away from this is, one, how powerful a documentary is. It's a great piece of content. I wouldn't stretch it. If you can't make one, don't make one. But if there is room to make something about a documentary, it's a great way to get a message across to an audience. And this doesn't have to be like a political thing or changing the world sort of thing, but even just for your product, finding out about your audience and creating a documentary around that is a great way to go. Content Marketing Institute, they created the Story of Content documentary about getting their message of content marketing out there, and that's doing really, really well for them. But the main message I want to get across, which is not the first time I've had this message in this series, is the importance of creating a quality piece of content. You don't want to look at content always as I have to make, 3 blogs a week or got to make a video a week, or don't have a time frame on it. If you have the opportunity to really make one great piece of content, do it. It's more valuable than all the blogs, all the podcasting, whatever you're trying to create. Creating one great piece of content can, either sink or swim your brand. So it's well worth it to make quality and take your time to make one piece of content, because sometimes that's all you need for your brand. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to talking to you next week.